Hello, good day, everybody. You are welcome to what? The Chem Lab Chemistry Lecture. All right, the last time I was here, we looked at matter and we stopped at separation techniques. And we said that in our next video, we're going to continue with what our class on what? Separation techniques. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Separation techniques. Now, today we're going to be looking at sieving, magnetic separation, sublimation, and filtration. Now, first of all, let's start with sieving. Sieving. Now, what is sieving basically talking about? Sieving is actually talking about separating what? Particles. Solid particles of what? Different sizes. Solid particles of different sizes. That's what sieving is what it's talking about. For example, let's say you want to what? Fry. There's this thing we call gari in Nigeria. Gari. Now what? All right. Now why am I laughing? Okay. Gari is actually a product of what? Cassava. So when you take cassava through some processing, and one of the products you get from it is what? Gari. Now, in the course of the processing, the grinding, the drying of the what? Cassava, some sand particles, which are also solid, mixes with the what? The cassava that you have washed, that you dry. Now, when you bring that cassava that you have dried, that has been mixed with some sand particles, you want to fry it to turn it to gari. In the course of frying, or before you even fry, you get something that look like what? We call it sieve. Okay, a sieve is more like you have a net. You know what we mean by net now? Those stuff that look like cloths that has what holes in them. Okay, so you get a sieve, and on that sieve you pour the what? Cassava, the dried cassava that has sand, and then you start what? Turning it on the surface. Okay, now what are you trying to do? You are trying to separate some solid particles from the main products that you need. So it therefore means that that sieve, the holes in that sieve are big enough for those particles you want to separate to pass through, leaving the ones that you do not want to separate on the surface of the what? The sieve. So are you getting it now? So those ones that separate us are solid particles that you do not need, while the ones that remain on it are solid particles that you need. So sieving is actually a technique or a method that is used to separate solid particles of different what? Sizes. Okay, so separating solid particles of different sizes. Okay, so when you want to separate solid particles of different sizes, so let's say you have gari, you have sand mixed together. Now these particles do not have the same size. Okay, they do not have the same size. So when you want to separate them, you use the what? Separation technique called what? Sieving. Now that also brings to mind that we have different types of what? Sieve. Remember we said something, that the holes in the sieve is in such a way that the particles that you do not need are tiny enough to pass through them. Is it not so? So it means that there are particles that could be of a larger size than others. And so if they have a larger size than others and you want to separate them, you will not use the same sieve that you use to separate smaller size particles to separate those other bigger what? Size particles. So that goes to tell us that we have different what? Kinds or types of what? Sieve. They have sieves that the pores or the holes are way tiny, And so the kind of particles that can pass through it are very, very tiny, tinier than those holes, such that they can pass through those holes. And then we have sieve that the holes that we have on them are a little what big. And so the particles that can pass through them should be smaller than those holes, so that they can what separate out of the main substance that you what desire. Okay, so that's for sieving. Now we're going to move on to magnetic separation. Magnetic separation. Now, magnetic separation. Magnetic separation is basically concerned with what? Separating magnetic substance from non-magnetic substance. As the name implies, magnetic what? Separation. That is separating magnetic substance from non-magnetic what? Substance. Now, for example, you want to separate iron filings from sand. Okay, so what do? You bring a magnet close to that what? Mixture. And when you bring a magnet, remember, it's mixture we're talking about now, how to separate them. Remember, we said that mixtures are substances that are made up of two or more constituents that can be separated by what? A physical method. And this physical method are these separation techniques that we are discussing. So when you bring a magnet close to that mixture, what happens? The iron filings will get attracted to the magnet, leaving behind the what? The sand what? Particles. So magnetic separation is concerned with separating magnetic substances, that is, substances that can be attracted by a magnet, from non-magnetic